Every fantasy game has places where magic, anima, force, creation, or other expressions of life gather. From the Stone Sea in Tyranny to the Earth Tree in Elden Ring, be it the result of spells cast, natural build-up of mana, or divine origin, these locations serve to connect us to one of the core aspects of fantasy world building. They indirectly define what magic is in the given setting, because they're the result of direct magical influence on that world. In Guild Wars, magic expresses itself through ley lines, powerful beings and their creations, as well as an infinite chaotic expanse of potential called the Mists. Let's see some of those effects for ourselves and then talk about what they say about the world of Tyria.
10.
At the top of the world but the bottom of this list hovers the World Spire, house to a massive shadow stone called the Spire's Heart. This tower has been the key conduit keeping Tyria hidden from creatures of the Mists. However, Mabon mentions that this last dragon cycle has been wearing down the powers of the World Spire to a point where it is currently fractured and unable to hide Tyria until the magical ecosystem is up and running again, which is something he mentions Aurene working on while we are battling the Cryptis. This leaves the shadow stone inside the spire a dull brownish color, with only the very top glowing a soft and yellow light. This light, however, is very familiar in shade and animation. It looks like the lanterns you light for the lamplighter achievements. They too are this swirling golden color when turned off. This might hint that the lanterns the wizards use to light their structures are small shadow stones. Shadow stones are amplifiers of magical power, which was what the seers used to create bloodstones, something that will be relevant later in this video. For now though, that means that the lanterns might also have a diegetic reason for being spread out in weird places around the zones of Soto. They would be small batteries of magical power the wizards can use to recharge and amplify their spells in a pinch. Of course, they're all dull these days, with the wizards spread thin, and we adventurers are going around filling them with power through our Heart of the Obscure. Of course, this is all speculation, but it would make a pretty cool canon. If that were true, that would also mean that a fully functioning Spire's Heart would be powerfully glowing blue from top to bottom, which would be a sight to behold and a sharp contrast from the current almost completely dimmed stone that we see before us now. In light of these details, however extrapolated and imagined they might be, I place the World Spire as number 10.
9.
From one heart to another, the heart of the Priory contains the total sum of accumulated knowledge gathered by the Priory, which is the scholarly of the three large independent organizations of Crater. The heart presents as a large beam of golden light with an orb-like top part that periodically sends down circles of radiance. The light washes over the suspended stone tablets and leaves after images of them in the same golden color. This to me makes it seem like the light is the true knowledge and that the current floating tables are being recorded by it. Perhaps the Priory changes them regularly as each tablet's contents gets absorbed and it no longer needs to be physically present in the heart. The tablets here are all written in New Crichton, though there were only 3 different tablets present. Well, technically 4, but the last 3 column tables are flying too high for me to get a good look at them, so the 3 that I find and translate recount the Char Rebellion, the Fall of Ascalon, and the Rise of the Dragons. I will read them out here as I find it a fascinating insight into how Tyrians record their own history, and I'll then give a bit of context that each tablet lacks. The Char Rebellion. The story of Kala's Scorchracer and the Char Rebellion against the Shaman caste has been told many times. Most historians have studied the Battle of the Plains of Golgheim and how Kala's female warriors trained in secret for a generation or more dealt a decisive blow to the Gold Legion. However, many often forget that the rebellion began some 40 years earlier when Kala's grandfather Pyre Fierceshot the shamans his legion. Now, I had to guess a few of the words there. Grandmother would fit as well as grandfather, but we know from the lore that Pyre Fierceshot was the grandfather of Kala's Scorchracer. With his warband, he killed one of the Gold Legion shamans and destroyed a temple. This got him cast out of the legions, which is why I assume the last part ends on legion. I can't quite fit a sentence there, but it seems likely to describe the event of killing a shaman and getting exiled. Oh, and the Gold Legion is a derogatory term for the Flame Legion, whose shaman enslaved the other legions in service of the Titans and attempted to keep control even after the death of those godlike beings. 2 generations down the ladder, Kala's Scorchracer trained an army of female warriors from across the legions in secret. The plains of Golgheim was the site of the final battle against the Gold Legion. Here, after securing victory, Kala personally accepted the surrender of the Gold Legion Imperator, though he deceived her and stabbed her with a poisoned dagger. She died uttering the words, "At least I die knowing that my sisters are free." What an absolute badass. And with that, we move to the next tablet. The Fall of Ascalon. History tells us that Ascalon City fell in the year 1090 AE. However, that date does not mark the end of the tale of Ascalon, but the beginning of an even darker chapter. Besieged by overwhelming Char forces, King Adalbern, last king of Ascalon, destroyed his sword Magda, unleashing the Foefire, which swept through the city, destroying the kings, cursing his turned. Again, a very well-known event in the Guild Wars history, one I will elaborate on later in this video, as the center of King Adalbern's destruction is still visible as Foefire's heart and pulses with the spectral fire that cursed his own people. This is why I assume the last word on the stele is turned. I believe the sentence speaks to how the people of Ascalon were turned into ghosts. For now, we move to the third stele, the Rise of the Dragons. Never shall a full reckoning of the tales of the dragons be told by mere mortals, for the cycle of their awakenings date back past the time of Giganticus Lupicus into the prehistory of our very world. The current rise of the dragons began almost 250 years ago in the far Shiver Peaks. Heroes of the time across... Again, something that began in Guild Wars 1. As the heroes of Nightfall slew Abaddon in the year 1075, the magic released by that death triggered the process of awakening for the Elder Dragons. Therefore, Heroes of the Time probably refers to our player characters from Guild Wars 1. The story of Guild Wars 2 starts exactly 250 years after these events in 1325. Fun note, current year in the game is pretty late. This tablet, however, also refers to the Giganticus Lupicus, which is a scholarly term used for a bunch of different races that once inhabited Tyria. We named them this because they all seem to be gigantic compared to modern Tyria races, though they did differ significantly from one another. They were also mostly wiped out by the Dragon Rise more than 10,000 years ago. It seems that the Jotun and the Norn might be surviving races from that time, as Ogden Stonehealer, a dwarf in the Priory, has written that those races have oral records passed down about the last Dragon Rise. All in all, this is really cool. From a completely diegetic perspective, it's a little silly that all these steles are repeats of the same three stories, but hiding lore in this way is a really cool concept, and I enjoyed translating the words for this video. So I'll place the Heart of the Priory as number 9.
8.
Hidden in a crevasse in Lake Doric, safe from the White Mantle and Crichton soldiers alike, is a grove with a single peach tree. This tree glitters with magical properties, and the guardian druid spirit shares generously of its fruits. These magic-imbued peaches mirror the peaches of immortality from Chinese mythology, the myths of which Red from OSP does an absolutely fantastic job of summarizing. I'll leave a link to that below. In this game, the peaches give a decent buff while in Lake Doric, and eating one gives the magic-imbued peach core. This is a part of a collection for getting the Sentient Oddity, which is an item that can convert bloodstone dust and imperial fragments into useful loot. The magic of the peach tree also radiates some form of peace. Two spirits are found nearby, and their stories are those of White Mantle soldiers sacrificed to the bloodstone and then released when the group's tinkering blew it up. More on that event later in this list as well. All in all, this area is a nice little hideaway with some cool references and a bit of potentially relevant lore implications, because what's the source of magic in the tree? Since it is tended by a druid spirit, the tree itself is probably made magic through care and ritual. The druids strove to be in harmony with nature and were worshippers of Melandru, the human god of nature, earth and growth. They also believed the Maguma jungle to be sentient and attempted to care for it. This latter belief might be them sensing the elder dragon Mortemoth slumbering in Maguma. Thus, the peach tree is made from the magic inherent in a being. This might either be Melandru, from whom the druid spirit gathers power, or perhaps Mortemoth if the seedling from the tree came from Maguma. And speaking of seeds and jungles,
7.
onto a place that has gained a consciousness of its own. The pale tree was found by the human Ronin when he fought off some plant monsters and found seeds in their bodies. These seeds were meant to grow into blighting trees, large Mortrim monstrosities birthing the armies of the elder dragon Mortemoth. The seed Ronin brought with him, however, grew up under a different influence, as Ronin and the centaur Ventari tended it. In fact, the tablet of Ventari can still be found in the Omphalos chamber. This tablet contains the teachings of the wise centaur about morality and strength. Guided by this tablet, the tree grew large, birthing a different breed of plant-based life forms, the Sylvari. Still growing, this tree forms the entire canopy above the main city of the Sylvari, with a pale pinkish white color and massive rounded leaves, each larger than most ships. The pale tree makes for an awe-inspiring sight that unfortunately is elevated enough that you have to look up to actually appreciate it. I will admit that I didn't see the full beauty and scale of the tree before researching this video. The tree's power seems to coalesce around its avatar. In this footage, she can be seen slumbering to recover from injuries caused by Mortemoth. Branches have grown up to form a cradle for her, where sunlight or magic is concentrated into visible beams above. I have to wonder if she's more loosened in the dream, a metaphysical realm that all Sylvari experience together before waking up in our world. In the dream, each Sylvari learns the essential skills they need, and has a calling appointed to them by the tree as well. As Sylvari pass away, their memories and experiences return to the dream to help teach future Sylvari and prepare them for the world. Being able to call up such a complex collective consciousness or underworld or pocket of the mists is a definite proof of the power this place contains, and here the source is clear. The pale tree was grown out of the power of Mortemoth and works within that original purview. It creates minions to send on missions that it deems worthy. Directly opposite to creation, however, we have
6.
Waters. As mentioned by the spirits of Watcher's Hollow, they were once imprisoned in the Bloodstone that exploded in Bloodstone Fen. The White Mantle sacrificed people to this powerful seer artifact, attempting to further tap into or increase its power. The Bloodstone is one of 5 different pieces of a larger magic repository, which the human gods split into the magic aspects of aggression, denial, destruction, and preservation, as well as a keystone. While Guild Wars 2 hasn't really been leaning into these forces as part of their world building, fighting for control over the Bloodstones formed a major plotline in the original game. The Bloodstone was a development on Shadow Stones, which is like what we saw in the Spire's Heart at the beginning of this video. The effects of this Bloodstone exploding are a maddening rage in all the people around. Ghosts of the dead run amok at night, while Bloodstone crazed White Mantle and Pact soldiers roam the Fen at daytime. Their eyes alight with bloody murder. With only this little evidence presented, I think the Bloodstone might have been the shard of aggression. It didn't simply kill or vaporize, except for in the very center of the blast, as might destruction. It didn't transform or contain, as might preservation, and it left behind large floating rocks and other supernatural phenomena I wouldn't associate with denial. This is definitely reading too much into a plotline the developers have already cut from the game, but part of what I like to do in videos like this is to theorize. It's the thinking and putting clues together itself that's satisfying, not necessarily them turning out to be right. Though with Dianthea Wilds coming up and focusing once again on the White Mantle, we might just get more Bloodstone lore. Anyhow, whichever Bloodstone was destroyed by the White Mantle's tinkering in Bloodstone Fen, it led to a cataclysmic explosion that was only contained because the god Balthazar sucked up most of the magic released. Even then, the entire environment is affected by the energies of the Bloodstone. Ley lines are scattered about, and anomalous pockets of wild magic pop in and out of existence constantly. A red haze envelops the entire zone. It's safe to say that the energies of the Bloodstone will remain in this area for generations, which means power and risk for anyone savvy or stupid enough to stay there and attempt to use it. And speaking of power remaining for generations, 5. The event creating this place of power sets the stage for Guild Wars 1, where you start in a pre-Foefire Ascalon and experience the event itself. This means that some people have way more in-depth knowledge of the events than I do, since I never got around to playing the first Guild Wars. If any of you are watching and feel like something should be explained further, feel free to leave a comment below. For now, the overarching plot is in a war between the Char legions and the human kingdom of Ascalon. Refusing to let the Char win, King Adalbern ritualistically destroyed Magder, which was a sword infused with seer magic. This caused a great blast of blue-white fire to swallow his capital and much of the surrounding countryside. Char caught in the blast were killed and dispersed, while humans rose against his angry ghosts. An undying army to forever fight and keep the Char off of Ascalonian soil. Ascalon lost the war that day, but even now in Guild Wars 2, the Foefire still powers those Ascalonian ghosts, and the Char too have been unable to declare victory over Adalbern and his long-lost kingdom. It is in the exact spot where Adalbern completed his ritual that we find Foefire's heart. Above ground, we see the ruins of Ascalon City sunken in a circle, with a ghostly blue glow emanating from the depths. Here, we can assume, stood Adalbern's palace itself, from the highest tower of which he broke the Seerforged sword to save his kingdom by damning his people to eternal war. As we descend into the dungeon Ascalonian catacombs, we find the sunken ruins of the tower itself, crumbled and hollow, yet still filled with aggressive ghosts, King Adalbern himself included. The sword Magda still protrudes from a bluish fiery crack in the stone where Adalbern thrusted in to break it and unleash his spell. This tower was the first to be hit with a large white light in the form of a sword, which then expanded into the blue-white fire that encapsulated most of Ascalon. This act of horrific sacrifice still infuses the lands of Ascalon to this day, a powerful earth-shattering and death-defying spell resonating with the very stones and soil of Ascalon. 4. From the Ascalonian highlands to the deserts of Elona, Sun's Refuge was used by the Sun Spears, including Spear Marshal Cormier, as a base of operations for their battle with the mad god Abaddon. It has ancient protections dating back to when it was a shrine to the god Melandro. As you uncover the cavern in Guild Wars 2, you help Kostijarin activate the huge brazier scattered about, which he describes as Cormier's final gift. Activating the braziers ignites a blindingly gold fire that connects each brazier across the cavern. This fire, Cormier's fire, safeguards the area against Kralgatorigor. Well, it should. But just as Kos assures us that Aurene will be safe here, the branded attack. This points towards the fire as more of a stabilizing ward, potentially preventing Kralgatoric from opening mist rifts inside of the chamber itself, thus allowing us safety so long as we defend the entrances. It's pretty nifty and definitely climbs the rankings in my estimation for the fantasy of a warded cave system where the heroes can regroup in peace, especially since it's done beautifully. The fire actually connected through troughs in the ground and built into the bridges. Just wow. If player housing in Janthia Wilds evolves to have potential homestead locations in multiple places around Tyria, I would love to place mine here in this beautiful oasis cavern illuminated with the warding fire of Cormine.
3.
Deep in the Maguma jungle, there's a cavern where 4 massively powerful ley lines converge. This is the place where the Pact attempts to gain access into the heart of the Elder Dragon Mortimer's domain. The leyline influence on the surrounding area seem to be either akin to magma itself or follow terrestrial forces such as magma streams when they were first formed. The evidence for this is in the geology of the surrounding areas, and excuse me for a second while I get really nerdy. It's rare to have the opportunity to look for rock formation and geological history in a gaming environment, but here goes. Looking at these stones, they bear a resemblance to the Giant's Causeway and other locations in the real world that are made of columnar basalt structures. These are created by magma cooling in a certain way, which makes it crack into natural hexagons. Now wait, you might say, those stones aren't exactly hexagonal, which is a good observation. Places like the Giant's Causeway are the most prominent locations for columnar basalt because it has formed so perfectly there. Most places, like this mountaintop I climbed when I last visited the Faroe Islands, are also made of columnar basalt, though as you can see it's far from perfectly hexagonal. The ground in the Leyline Confluence also has a very vesicular look. Lots of holes and lots of different sizes are everywhere. This is a clear visual indicator of other types of volcanic rock such as pumice, which according to Wikipedia is created when superheated, highly pressurized rock is rapidly ejected from a volcano, which is something that can also happen underwater where it forms large amounts of pumice in a short time. Since the Tangled Depths has an entirely underwater tube system, this might have been the case for the Leyline Confluence as well. As the lava drained, the columnar basalt formed. Then for a while it was filled with water while the layer beneath contained a new set of magma tubes. Eruptions from these made it into the watery layer above, depositing material in the form of pumice. Skipping forward a long time and the magma has receded further with the water flowing down and filling the lower tunnels, leaving the Leyline Confluence open with columnar basalt pillars everywhere, covered somewhat by a layer of pumice. Now I'm no geologist, and if any of you who are watching are geologists or geoscientists, I'd love to hear how far-fetched this theory is. I think it would be reasonable to assume any anomaly with how the magma rose or fell could be attributed to the Elder Dragon Primordus. A geographical move from this fiery dragon could account for an abnormally high or low level of magma in the local area. Anyways, that was great fun to read into. Details like these where we can look at the real world and compare what might have gone into the creation of the environment really grounds the experience of the game. Of course, the magic then infuses the area, making these basalt columns move in and out, giving the impression of breathing. The entire area is alive with the magical power of the ley lines. It's an excellent layer on top of what is real, and just like the Pact shoots through the wall into Mortimer's domain, I shoot this fantastically grounded area into the top 3.
2.
High in the Shiver Peaks stand an ancient tower of uncertain origin. In both Guild Wars games we refer to it as the Eye of the North, which is fitting for it can indeed act as an eye. Central to the tower is a scrying pool wherein powerful beings can guide the mind back in time to witness past events. In Guild Wars 2, the powerful aura of this place catches the attention of Aurene as a nascent Elder Dragon, and she brings us here to use as a base of operations against Jormag and Primordus. Aurene is one of those aforementioned powerful beings, and she allows us to look at the actions of our antagonist Ryland to understand his plans. Aurene settling in the tower has left its mark, blending the ancient architecture, lush plants, and Aurene's own prismatic crystals. This creates interesting prismatic light play on the walls of the central chamber. Moving out from here and into the central hall, this tower stretches up in a way that makes it difficult to capture in a single frame. The base of this enormous, I guess it's kind of a chimney structure, is a huge suspended bonfire, burning in a brazier of the same material as most of the tower structure, the exception being these crystal glass windows that might have covered the main hall, isolating it completely from the cold outside when the tower was first built. The architecture here isn't something I've seen anywhere else in the game, though according to the wiki it is said to resemble structures at godly sites such as Zara, which it doesn't have any sources unless it's from a PC Gamer article from 2007, along with the Norn being the first modern species to discover the eye. So I looked a bit into that and came up with a potential lead that company released a PC Gamer Ultimate Guild Wars guide in 2007, which I can't find any online versions of, and people referencing it talk about printing errors and it missing pages. Yeah, this was when I decided that that was enough digging for a chill video on locations and Guild Wars. I have neither the skills nor the available time of deep diving icons like H-Bomber Guy and CGP Grey. So I'm gonna leave it up to you to decide whether the architecture we're currently looking at reminds you of the very circle-based architecture of Ra. It'll be easy to compare since this list needs a
1.
The top spot here has to go to the Artesian Waters in Ore. The power of this place was what drew the human gods' attention towards Tyria, and this is where they first set foot upon the world. It was they who built the city of Ra around this wellspring of magic. Unfortunately, it had already drawn another being as well. The elder dragon Saitan slumbered beneath the waters, unnoticed by gods and humans alike. Some speculate that the power of the Artesian Waters come from Saitan, but there are two reasons I find this unlikely. The first is the way the other elder dragons choose their sleeping spots. On this list we covered the Leyline Convergence. This convergence of power was chosen by Mortremoth for its slumber. The primal kiln, an enormous volcano at the center of a nature sanctuary, watched over by druid spirits, while not chosen for a spot in this video, served as Primordus' bed. That list goes on, but the second point here is that Saitan's magic can be purified away from the waters. You might have noticed the NPC standing in the middle of my camera shots here. They're unavoidable as this instance is only accessible twice in the game, when reforging Caladbog post Heart of Thorns, as well as during the personal story mission, The Source of Ore. You come here with Traherne to cut off Saitan's ability to passively animate the corpses in Ore. Now getting to this mission to film a video on it is a bit of a pain since the personal story in vanilla can't be replayed, so I had to get a character all the way to this point and be sure to get all of the video I needed without the option to easily go back afterwards. This isn't so much a complaint of the company, I believe it's a consequence of having a larger impact on the story than we're allowed later on. Sometimes you choose between 2 or 3 story missions and they lead to different outcomes. This might make it difficult to go back in the middle of it since the choices made would change later missions potentially in weird ways. Anyhow, Traherne performs a ritual with the sword Caladbog and purifies the well, making the trees bloom, the miasma in the air fade away, and an instrumental version of Fear Not This Night play. That song still makes me emotional. Getting that at the end of the big achievement truly created a feeling of accomplishment. The mission of defending Traherne, with all of the pack coming in to help hold off the Risen as he performs the ritual, and the radical transformation of the Artesian Waters are excellent storytelling moments. Looking around the space after the transformation, one can imagine what beauty the human gods first found in Ore and why they chose to stay and build their followership here. It gives us insight into how Ore will look again in many years as the natural wellspring slowly heals the land, helped along of course by the expedition at Siren's Landing, who are bringing in plant life that can survive in the soil. Since this removes the gods and elder dragons as the sources of magic in the Artesian Waters, we might be looking at one of the naturally occurring phenomena in Tyria. The eternal alchemy, as the Asura would put it, posits that magic exists all around and with it everything in the world. The elder dragons consume it to make sure it doesn't overflow and destroy the world, and the ley lines carry it around. Thus, to me, the Artesian Waters, and probably the Eye of the North as well, seem most likely to be natural manifestations of Tyria. It's clear to me that the Artesian Waters deserve the top spot of this video. They're connected to a bunch of the lore in the game, get a climatic battle ending in Fear Not This Night, and get referenced after Heart of Thorns with a return questline. Thus, they cap off this list as number 1. Tyria, though a land of innate magic, is constantly influenced by external forces. While the Elder Dragons are part of the natural Tyrian world, the influence of them and the ley lines only covers about half the places of power in this video. The Pale Tree, Leyline Confluence, Eye of the North, and Artesian Waters are all closely tied to the land of Tyria, and Watcher's Hollow might also be of Mortremoth, though that leaves the rest as influence of alien forces. Artifacts from the battle between the Seers and Muassad, neither race being native to Tyria, include the World Spire, the Bloodstones, and Megdar. Finally, the 6 human gods came to our world from the mists and are associated with the sun's refuge, and most likely Watcher's Hollow. The heart of the Priory stands a bit apart. The Priory itself is a monastic organization, but I've not been able to find any hints as to whether the heart is made with godly magic or the innate magic in the Tyrians of the organization. While my slice here isn't enough to actually make a statement about how large the amount of magic brought into Tyria compared to the magic inherent in the world is, it's safe to say that there's a large amount of magic brought upon the world world by outside forces. This makes for an engaging conflict of interest in the world itself. Clearly not all magic is beneficial to have around. The ecosystem of the magic interior being affected led to the current dragon cycle, as well as the unbalance allowed in the Dragon Void as the fight with the god Abaddon stirred Primordus from its slumber. Perhaps Isgarin has the right idea when he attempts to shield Tyria from the influences lurking in the mists. Of course, he himself as a seer constitutes one of those influences, which gives us plenty of reasons to distrust him as well. I see what other content creators mean when they talk about how easy it is to go off on irrelevant tangents. Isgarin and magical politics will have to wait for another video. I like the variation of magical influences that are built into the Guild Wars setting. It makes for very dynamic and malleable rules of what's possible. I do fear, however, that the downside of that is in the plot lines that are sometimes abandoned or forgotten. The schools of magic in the Bloodstones we mentioned earlier are one aspect of this. They've never been mentioned in the second game, though the Bloodstones themselves have been prominently used in one of the zones. The more world building you do into something, the easier it is to accidentally create a paradox between modes of magic, which can lead to unsatisfying results to tie up loose threads. I feel like Guild Wars generally handle this pretty well though. It's truly a world I enjoy exploring and theorizing about. While places of power can tell us about how magic is anchored in the world we experience, so can something as innocuous as fountains tell us about the civilizations that inhabit those worlds. Oh look, it's a segue into a video you can watch on that. If you're still here, I'd like to express how much I enjoy making these videos and delving into all sorts of details in Guild Wars. If you've watched multiple of my videos, you might have noticed that the format is evolving with each video. Right now it's mostly influenced by my journey of self-discovery into how and what I enjoy covering, but I'd also love to be influenced by you. If you have any feedback on the videos, please do reach out in the comments below, from I preferred it when you did blah 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 to I would really love to see more of blah blah blah. Any feedback is welcome. Thank you for being on this journey with me. That's all for now.